The 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene. Welcome back. This is part 2 of our audiobook series. If you missed part 1, check the link in the description. Let's pick up right where we left off. Chapter 25. Recreate yourself. Do not accept the roles that society foists on you. Recreate yourself by forging a new identity, one that commands attention and never bores the audience. Be the master of your own image, rather than letting others define it for you. Incorporate dramatic devices into your public gestures and actions. Your power will be enhanced, and your character will seem larger than life. The world wants to assign you a role in life, and once you accept that role, you are doomed. Your power is limited to the tiny amount that has been allotted to the weak and obedient. But there is another path, the path of the artist. The first step in the process of self-creation is to become self-aware, to realize that you are an actor on a stage and that you have the power to write your own script. You must learn to view yourself with distance, as if you were a character in a play. This allows you to mold your appearance and your emotions, rather than being a slave to them. Consider the transformation of Aurora Dupin-Dudevant, a woman born in 1804 into a stifling French society. As a woman, her role was clearly defined. She was to be a dutiful wife and mother, subservient to men, and silent in public affairs. But Aurora had a fire within her. She was unhappy in her marriage and bored by the limitations placed upon her gender. Instead of accepting her fate, she decided to recreate herself entirely. She left her husband and moved to Paris. There, she did the unthinkable. She began to wear men's clothing. This was not merely a disguise, it was a statement. In her grey trench coat and felt hat, she smoked cigars and strode through the streets with the confidence of a man. She gained access to the gritty intellectual underbelly of Paris, places where women were forbidden. But she went further. She created a new name for herself, George Sand. Under this male pseudonym, she wrote novels that challenged the sexual and social conventions of her time. Critics and readers alike were fascinated. Who was this George Sand? Her androgynous appearance and her bold writing made her a sensation. She became a celebrity, a figure of mystery and power who controlled her own destiny. By rejecting the role of the submissive woman and crafting a persona that was half man, half woman, she forced the world to deal with her on her own terms. She became a character in the public eye, and this theatricality gave her a power that no ordinary woman of her time could ever possess. Julius Caesar was another master of self-creation. He understood that a leader must be a showman. He did not simply rely on his military victories, he carefully crafted his public image to appeal to the masses. He knew that the people loved a spectacle, so he gave them one. He organized lavish games and gladiator fights, bankrupting himself in the process, but winning the undying love of the Roman mob. He practiced his speeches until he was a mesmerizing orator, knowing that words are the tools with which a leader sculpts the public's perception. When he spoke, he used dramatic gestures and emotional pauses, turning every address into a theatrical performance. Caesar also knew the power of symbols. He wore unique clothing, setting himself apart from other senators. He claimed descent from the goddess Venus, wrapping himself in a cloak of divinity. Even his death was a piece of high drama. When he saw his friend Brutus among the assassins, he did not fight. He covered his face with his toga and accepted his fate, dying as a tragic hero rather than a butchered politician. This final act of theatre ensured that he would be remembered not as a tyrant, but as a legend. To master this law, you must see yourself as clay. You are not fixed, you are fluid. Do not let your parents, your friends, or your society tell you who you are. Define yourself. Choose a new name, a new look, a new way of speaking. Create a signature style that makes you instantly recognizable. But remember, this new identity must be dramatic. It must be larger than life. A boring character has no power. You must keep the audience on the edge of their seats, wondering what you will do next. Beware of consistency. The character you create should be multifaceted and surprising. If you become too predictable, you lose your hold on the public's imagination. Like a good actor, you must know when to change the tempo, when to raise your voice, and when to whisper. You must be in control of your emotions, using them as tools to achieve a specific effect rather than letting them control you. When you are angry, let it be a calculated anger, designed to intimidate. When you are sad, let it be a noble sadness, designed to elicit sympathy. Ultimately, the goal of recreating yourself is freedom. By casting off the shackles of expectation and forging your own identity, you free yourself from the judgment of others. You become the author of your own life story, and in a world of conformists, the unique and dramatic individual is king. Chapter 26. Keep your hands clean. You must seem a paragon of civility and efficiency. Your hands are never soiled by mistakes and nasty deeds. Maintain such a spotless appearance by using others as scapegoats and cat's paws to disguise your involvement. Part 1. Conceal your mistakes. Have a scapegoat around to take the blame. Our good name and reputation depend more on what we conceal than on what we reveal. Everyone makes mistakes, but those who are truly clever manage to hide them and to make sure someone else is blamed. A convenient scapegoat should always be kept around for such moments. Near the end of the 2nd century AD, as China's mighty Han Empire slowly collapsed, the great general and imperial minister Cao Cao emerged as the most powerful man in the country. During a campaign to extend his power, he found himself in a dangerous situation. His army was running out of food. He was besieging a city, and the operation had dragged on longer than expected. His soldiers were on the verge of mutiny. If he reduced their rations, they would revolt. If he did nothing, they would starve. Cao Cao summoned his chief of commissariat and quietly ordered him to reduce the rations, issuing smaller bowls of grain to the troops. The chief worried that this would cause anger, but the general assured him he would handle it. As predicted, the soldiers began to grumble, complaining that the general was cheating them. The mutiny Cao Cao feared was brewing. He acted swiftly. He secretly summoned the chief of commissariat again and had him beheaded. He then displayed the man's head on a pole for the entire army to see, along with a proclamation. The chief had been stealing from the granary and using smaller bowls to cover his theft. The soldiers, satisfied that the thief had been punished, accepted the smaller rations without complaint. Cao Cao had saved the army and his own reputation by sacrificing an innocent man. The scapegoat is a ritual that goes back to the dawn of civilization. When plague or misfortune struck a tribe, the people would transfer their guilt and sin onto a goat or a person who would then be banished or killed. This cleansed the community. In the game of power, the dynamic is the same. When you make a mistake or your planned deception fails, do not apologize or make excuses. Apologies are a sign of weakness. They raise doubts about your competence. Instead, find a scapegoat. By shifting the blame to a subordinate or an outsider, you not only distract attention from your own error, but also appear as the upholder of justice. The bloody sacrifice arrests the public's anger and allows you to walk away with your hands clean. Part 2. Make use of the cat's paw. In the fable of the monkey and the cat, a monkey grabs the paw of his friend, the cat, and uses it to fish chestnuts out of a hot fire. The cat gets burned, but the monkey gets the chestnuts, and he doesn't have to risk his own skin. This is the definition of the cat's paw, a person you use to do the dangerous or ugly work while you stay safely in the background. In the late 1920s, the Chinese communists under Mao Zedong were fighting a bitter civil war against the nationalists, led by Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang was determined to wipe out the communists and nearly succeeded, forcing them into the devastating Long March. But in 1937, the Japanese invaded China. Chiang, captured by his own mutinous generals, expected to be executed by the communists. Instead, Mao ordered his release. He proposed that they join forces to fight the Japanese invaders. Chiang accepted, believing he had been spared out of weakness. He took charge of the conventional war against Japan, throwing his massive armies into head-to-head combat. The communists, meanwhile, fought a guerrilla war, suffering far fewer casualties. For years, the nationalists bore the brunt of the Japanese war machine, their forces decimated and their resources exhausted. When the Japanese were finally defeated in 1945, Chiang looked around to find that his army was shattered. The communists, however, had used the time to rest, regroup, and expand their base. They turned on the exhausted nationalists and swept them from the mainland. Mao had used the Japanese as a cat's paw to destroy his rival. He let the invaders do the work that he could not have done himself, saving his strength for the final victory. There are two primary uses for the cat's paw. The first is to save appearances. When you need to punish a rival or assert your authority, doing it yourself can make you look aggressive or petty. By getting someone else to execute the blow, you remain the benevolent leader. The second use is to save energy. Why exhaust yourself performing difficult tasks when you can find someone else to do them for you? Ideally, you should find a cat's paw who is aggressive and eager to fight. Let them pick the quarrel and draw the fire while you wait to collect the prize. Kuriyama Daisen, a master of the Japanese tea ceremony, once used this tactic with supreme elegance. He admired a painting owned by a friend who was deep in debt. He could have just paid the debt and asked for the painting, but that would have been transactional and crass. Instead, he manipulated the situation so that the friend gave him the painting as a gift. In return, Daisen gave the friend a valuable vase with the suggestion that he gift it to his creditor. The creditor, an art lover, was so charmed by the vase that he forgave the entire debt. In the end, the friend was saved from ruin, the creditor was happy, and Daisen got the painting he desired, all without ever appearing to be anything but a gracious friend. He had used the vase and the creditor's greed as cat's paws to secure his prize. To master this law, you must learn to hide your intentions and control the strings from the shadows. Do not be the person who clumsily grabs at what they want. Be the puppet master who maneuvers others into doing the grabbing for you. Whatever happens, your hands must remain spotless, your reputation untarnished by the soot of the fire. Chapter 27. Play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. The human race possesses an insatiable and desperate need to believe in something. This inherent hunger makes people eminently gullible, for they cannot endure long periods of doubt or the emptiness that comes from a lack of faith. If you can position yourself as the focal point of this desire, offering them a new cause, a new elixir, or a new path to salvation, you will gain a power that rivals that of the greatest religious leaders. To create such a following requires no divine inspiration, but rather a calculated understanding of human psychology and the dynamics of the crowd. By transforming yourself into a guru or a messiah, you lift yourself into a realm where you no longer need to coerce people. They will follow you voluntarily, defend you fiercely, and sacrifice their wealth for your cause. The history of charlatanism offers a blueprint for creating such a following, a process that can be distilled into 5 distinct steps. The first step is to keep your words vague but full of promise. To attract a following, you must speak not to the intellect, which analyzes and dissects, but to the emotions and the soul. Your initial appeal should be a blur of grand concepts: transformation, enlightenment, infinite health, using resonant words that sound profound but mean little. By keeping things hazy, you allow your listeners to fill in the gaps with their own dreams and desires. You must offer a simple solution to the complex problems of life, a panacea that requires no hard work or patience, but simply belief in you. Once you have attracted attention, the second step is to emphasize the visual and the sensual over the intellectual. Boredom and skepticism are the enemies of the cult leader. To keep rational thought at bay, you must dazzle the senses. Create a spectacle with costumes, lighting, incense, and strange rituals. Surround yourself with luxury and symbols of power. When the eyes are overwhelmed by pageantry and the ears filled with chanting or music, the mind ceases to question. The sheer aesthetic impact of your presence should signal that you are not an ordinary mortal, but a being of a higher order. The third step is to borrow the forms of organized religion to structure your group. Even in secular times, the structures of religion hold immense authority. You must organize your followers into a hierarchy, creating levels of sanctity and knowledge that they can aspire to climb. Give them titles, create rituals for them to perform, and establish a set of behaviors that bind them to the group. By mimicking the structure of a church, you lend your cause a veneer of legitimacy and holiness. You become not a dictator or a salesman, but a prophet, a guru, or a teacher. The fourth step is to disguise your source of income. A true spiritual leader should appear to be above material concerns, yet your coffers must be filled. You must never be seen as hungry for money. Instead, make your wealth appear to be a natural consequence of your spiritual success, or a necessary tool for spreading the truth. Your followers will want to believe that your prosperity is proof of your power, and they will imitate your lifestyle in the hope that they too will be blessed. By surrounding yourself with the trappings of success, you validate the effectiveness of your methods without ever revealing that the source of your wealth is the followers themselves. The final and most crucial step is to set up an us versus them dynamic. A group thrives on internal cohesion, and nothing unifies a group faster than an external threat. You must manufacture an enemy, a devious force of non-believers, a corrupt government, or a rival faction that is out to destroy you. Anyone who questions your authority or reveals the hollowness of your claims is immediately branded as an agent of this dark force. This creates a siege mentality. Your followers will band together to protect the truth, and their faith will be strengthened by the persecution they believe they are enduring. Consider the career of Franz Mesmer, who captivated Paris in the late 18th century with his theory of animal magnetism. Mesmer claimed that a magnetic fluid pervaded the universe and that he could harness this fluid to cure all ailments and bring humanity into harmony. In his Parisian salon, he created a sensory masterpiece. The room was dimly lit and scented with orange blossom. Music from a glass harmonica drifted through the air. Patients sat around a large vat filled with magnetized water, holding iron rods and linking hands to form a circuit. Mesmer himself would appear in a lilac silk robe, moving through the crowd, touching patients and inducing violent, cathartic convulsions. Mesmer understood that the power of his cure lay not in science, but in the group dynamic. In a crowd, emotions are contagious. When one person began to gasp or swoon, others followed suit, overwhelmed by the collective hysteria. Beneath the surface of this spiritual gathering lay a repressed sexuality that Mesmer expertly manipulated, directing the physical and emotional release of his followers. Although a royal commission of scientists, including Benjamin Franklin, eventually debunked his theories as mere suggestion and imagination, the cult of mesmerism survived. The need to believe was stronger than scientific fact. Mesmer had tapped into the primal human desire for unity and healing, and by wrapping it in the guise of a new science, he created a following that outlasted his own reputation. To master this law, you must recognize that reason is a weak force compared to emotion. People are desperate to escape the banality of their lives and the uncertainty of the world. By offering them a grand illusion, a sense of belonging, and a target for their anxieties, you can wield immense power. But you must tread carefully. The crowd that worships you can turn on you in an instant if the spell is broken too abruptly. It is a dangerous game of manipulation where you must constantly feed the hunger you have created, always staying one step ahead of reality. Chapter 28. Enter action with boldness. If you are unsure of a course of action, do not attempt it. Your doubts and hesitations will infect your execution. Timidity is dangerous. Better to enter with boldness. Any mistakes you commit through audacity are easily corrected with more audacity. Everyone admires the bold. No one honors the timid. Most people are dominated by their fears. We want to avoid tension and conflict. We want to be liked by everyone. We may contemplate a bold action, but we rarely bring it to life because we are terrified of the consequences. We worry about what others might think of us or the hostility we might stir up if we dare to go beyond our usual place. We often disguise this timidity as a concern for others, a desire not to hurt or offend, but in reality, it is self-absorption. We are worried about ourselves. Boldness, on the other hand, is outer-directed. It makes people feel more at ease because it is less self-conscious and less repressed. In 1514, a 22-year-old named Pietro Aretino was working as a lowly assistant scullion in a wealthy Roman household. He had dreams of becoming a great writer and inflaming the world with his name, but his low birth as the son of a poor shoemaker seemed an insurmountable barrier. How could a mere lackey hope to realize such ambitions? That year, Pope Leo X received a magnificent gift from the King of Portugal, a great elephant named Hanno. It was the first elephant seen in Rome since imperial times, and the Pope adored the beast, showering it with attention and gifts. Despite the Pope's love, Hanno became deathly ill. The papal doctors administered a 500-pound purgative, but the elephant died. The Pope went into deep mourning. To console himself, he summoned the great painter Raphael and ordered him to create a life-sized painting of Hanno above the animal's tomb, bearing the inscription, "What nature took away, Raphael has with his art restored." Aretino saw his chance. Over the next few days, a pamphlet began to circulate through the streets of Rome. It was entitled The Last Will and Testament of the Elephant Hanno. It was a masterpiece of satire. In the document, the elephant bequeathed various parts of his body to the great cardinals of Rome, tailoring each gift to the prelate's well-known vices. To Cardinal Santa Croce, Hanno gave his knees so that he could better imitate the elephant's genuflections. To Cardinal Santi Quattro he gave his jaws so he could more readily devour all of Christ's revenues. To the lecherous Cardinal Grassi, the elephant bequeathed an oversized and very private part of his anatomy. The pamphlet spared no one, not even the Pope. It ended with a warning verse. "See to it that Aretino is your friend, for he is a bad enemy to have. His words alone could ruin the High Pope, so God guard everyone from his tongue." The audacity of the attack stunned Rome. Everyone rushed to find out who this daring young man was. Even the Pope, amused by the sheer boldness of the satire, sought Aretino out and gave him a job in the papal service. Aretino had launched himself from obscurity to fame in a single stroke. He became known as the Scourge of Princes, eventually earning the respect and fear of the most powerful monarchs in Europe. He understood that when you are as small as David, you must find a Goliath to attack. The larger the target, the more attention you gain. The bolder the attack, the more you stand out from the crowd. Boldness is not an innate quality, it is a habit that must be cultivated. Even Napoleon Bonaparte had to learn it. In social settings, he was originally awkward and timid, but he overcame this by practicing boldness in every part of his life because he saw its tremendous power. He understood that boldness can literally enlarge a man, making him seem larger than life. We see a similar transformation in Ivan the Terrible, who went from a harmless boy to a terrifying authority figure simply by pointing a finger and taking bold action against his tormentors. This principle applies powerfully in the art of seduction. Great seducers like Casanova succeeded not because of their looks, but because of their effrontery. Casanova did not hesitate. He surrendered himself completely to the woman he desired, making her believe he would risk his life for her. This absence of hesitation is intoxicating. The moment a seducer hesitates, the charm is broken, for the victim becomes aware of the process and the seducer's own self-consciousness. Boldness keeps the illusion alive. In negotiation too, boldness is a supreme weapon. If you ask for a high price, you set the value of your services. If you ask for little, you are saying you are worth little. And in the face of danger, boldness is often the safest course. The fable of the boy and the nettle illustrates this well. A boy playing in the fields touched a nettle and was stung. He ran home crying to his mother, saying he had barely touched the nasty weed. "It was just your touching it," his mother explained, "that caused it to sting you. The next time you meddle with a nettle, grasp it tightly, and it will do you no hurt." Timidity is like the boy's gentle touch. It invites the sting. It creates awkwardness and allows others to doubt you. Boldness strikes fear and demands respect. If you are unsure, do not act. But if you act, do so with the ferocity of a lion. Do not leave room for doubt. Hesitation creates gaps that your enemies can exploit. Boldness obliterates those gaps and builds your authority. Chapter 29. Plan. All the way to the end. The ending is everything. It is the architect of the deed, the final stroke that gives meaning to all that came before. To plan all the way to the end is not merely to have a vague goal, it is to envision the entire journey, taking into account every obstacle, every twist of fortune, and every consequence that might arise. By foreseeing the conclusion, you protect yourself from the emotional vertigo of the moment. You are not overwhelmed by circumstances because you have already lived them in your mind, while others are lost in the improvisational fog of the present. Reacting to immediate pressures, you gently guide fortune, determining the future by having thought it through to its absolute finale. In 1510, a Spanish ship departed Hispaniola for Venezuela to rescue a besieged colony. Miles out to sea, a stowaway climbed out of a provision chest. It was Vasco Núñez de Balboa, a nobleman fleeing crippling debt and possessed by a singular obsession, the discovery of the legendary kingdom of gold, El Dorado. Balboa was a man of immense boldness and improvisation. When the ship found the colony abandoned, he rallied the sailors to establish a new settlement in Panama, named Darien. He ruthlessly maneuvered the official governor out of power, forcing him to flee to Spain, and took command himself. Balboa's audacity served him well in the short term, but his lack of long-term planning soon closed in on him. He had usurped a royal position, and he knew the Spanish king would eventually send a force to arrest him. His only hope for a reprieve was to achieve a discovery so magnificent that the crown would have to forgive his crimes. He learned from local Indians of a vast ocean to the south and a land of gold called Biru, Peru. In 1513, with 190 soldiers, he plunged into the treacherous jungles of Panama. The march was a nightmare of torrential rains, fever, and hostile tribes, but Balboa persevered. He stood atop a mountain peak and became the first European to lay eyes on the Pacific Ocean. He marched into the waves in full armor, claiming the sea and all its lands for Spain. When news of this discovery reached Spain, Balboa was hailed as a hero. However, the king had already dispatched a new governor, Pedro Arias Dávila, known as Pedrarias, with orders to arrest Balboa. By the time Pedrarias arrived, the pardon had come, but the two men were forced into an uneasy power-sharing arrangement. Balboa, the dreamer, wanted only to press on to Peru. Pedrarias, the jealous bureaucrat, wanted to destroy his rival. Balboa, blinded by his vision of gold and glory, failed to calculate the treachery of the man standing next to him. He exhausted himself building ships for the voyage south, fighting the elements and the jungle, while Pedrarias waited. Finally, inviting Balboa to a meeting to discuss the expedition, Pedrarias sprung his trap. Balboa was met on the road not by friends but by soldiers led by his former ally, Francisco Pizarro. He was arrested, tried for treason, and beheaded. Pizarro would go on to find Peru and reap the glory that Balboa had dreamed of but failed to secure. Balboa's tragedy was that he mistook a bold beginning for a complete plan. He acted on impulse and emotion, never looking far enough ahead to see the vultures circling. He did the hard work of discovery, but left himself vulnerable to those who would steal the fruit of his labor. He did not plan to the end. He planned only to the next horizon. Contrast this with the cold-blooded foresight of Otto von Bismarck. In 1863, as a minister in Prussia, Bismarck set out with a clear, ultimate goal: the unification of the German states under Prussian rule. He did not rush. He did not rely on hope. He crafted a master plan that would unfold over a decade. First, he initiated a war with Denmark to recover disputed territories, enlisting Austria as an ally. This was a feint. He knew that fighting alongside Austria would eventually lead to friction over the spoils. Once the war with Denmark was won, he used the inevitable squabbles over territory to lure Austria into a war with Prussia in 1866. King William of Prussia and his generals, intoxicated by their swift victory over the Austrians, wanted to march on Vienna and shatter the Austrian Empire. Bismarck stopped them. He threatened to resign, even to throw himself out of a window. He knew that a humiliated, destroyed Austria would remain a permanent, bitter enemy on Prussia's flank. He wanted a weakened Austria, not a destroyed one, because his plan required a neutral Austria for the next phase. He forced the king to accept a lenient peace treaty. Bismarck's final act was to provoke a war with France in 1870, uniting all the German states against a common enemy. After Prussia's decisive victory, he formed the German Empire. Having achieved his ultimate goal, he stopped. While other European powers scrambled for colonies and expanded recklessly, Bismarck declared Germany a satisfied power. He spent the rest of his life working to maintain peace, knowing that further expansion would create a coalition of enemies that would destroy what he had built. He had planned all the way to the end, and when he reached it, he knew exactly when to quit. Most men are ruled by their hearts, not their heads. They launch into action driven by desire or anger, improvising as they go. But improvisation is a dangerous drug. It may carry you through one crisis, but it blinds you to the next. The strategic mind does not hope. It calculates. It works backward from the desired finish line, determining every step required to reach it. It anticipates the envy of rivals, the exhaustion of resources, and the fickleness of public opinion. By planning to the end, you do not merely seek victory, you secure the peace that follows, ensuring that your triumph is not a fleeting spark, but a lasting monument. Chapter 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Your actions must seem natural and executed with ease. All the toil and practice that go into them, and also all the clever tricks, must be concealed. When you act effortlessly, as if you could do much more. Avoid the temptation of revealing how hard you work. It only raises questions. Teach no one your tricks, or they will be used against you. The Japanese tea ceremony, or cha-no-yu, is an art form of exquisite simplicity, yet this simplicity is the result of painstaking labor and intense discipline. Sen no Rikyu, the most famous tea master of the 16th century, once had a garden of morning glories that was the talk of the town. The dictator Toyotomi Hideyoshi desired to see this famous garden and was invited by Rikyu. When Hideyoshi arrived, he was shocked to find that all the flowers had been cut down and removed. He entered the tea room in a rage, only to stop dead in his tracks. In the alcove, arranged in a simple clay vase, sat a single morning glory, the most perfect one of the bunch. By removing the distraction of the many, Rikyu had focused the emperor's attention on the singular beauty of the one. The gesture seemed simple, almost spontaneous, but it was the product of a master's eye and a willingness to destroy months of work for a single moment of perfection. Hideyoshi was overcome with the beauty of the gesture and forgot his anger. Rikyu had concealed the effort of cultivation and the labor of destruction, presenting only the sublime result. This is the essence of Sprezzatura, a term coined by the Italian courtier Baldassare Castiglione. It means the ability to make difficult actions look easy, to hide the artifice and appear natural. Contrast this with the mistake of the great escape artist Harry Houdini later in his life. Houdini made his reputation on the miraculous nature of his escapes. People believed he possessed supernatural powers because they could not see how he freed himself from chains, locked boxes, and submerged tanks. But as he grew older, he felt the need to explain himself. He wrote books exposing the tricks of fraudulent mediums and, in doing so, began to reveal the mechanics of deception. He even started to explain some of his own stunts to the public, driven by a desire to be seen as a clever technician rather than a magician. The public's reaction was not admiration, but disappointment. Once they knew that his escapes were a matter of hidden keys and flexible joints, the magic evaporated. He became just another man doing a job. He had violated the law of effortlessness. By showing the sweat and the gears behind the curtain, he destroyed the illusion of omnipotence that had been the source of his power. In the world of power, appearances are everything. If you are seen working too hard, you appear weak, as if you are struggling to maintain your position. But if you make your achievements look like they cost you nothing, you appear to have a reserve of power, a godlike capacity to do even more. This intimidates your rivals and awes your followers. Consider the acrobat who walks the tightrope. If we saw him sweating and shaking, we would be terrified for him, but we would not be impressed. It is his calm smile, his casual wave to the crowd while suspended over the abyss, that makes us gasp. We know it is difficult, but his refusal to show the difficulty makes him seem superhuman. Never show your work. Keep your drafts, your practice sessions, and your discarded ideas to yourself. Let the world see only the finished masterpiece. If you have spent all night preparing a speech, deliver it as if the words just came to you. If you have spent years maneuvering to get a promotion, act as if it were the natural progression of your talent. By concealing the labor, you protect your methods from being stolen, and you maintain the aura of a natural genius, a person for whom success is a birthright, not a struggle.
Chapter 31. Control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal. The best deceptions are the ones that seem to give the other person a choice. Your victims feel they are in control but are actually your puppets. Give people options that come out in your favor, whichever one they choose. Force them to make choices between the lesser of two evils, both of which serve your purpose. Put them on the horns of a dilemma. They are gored wherever they turn. In the mid-16th century, Ivan the Terrible, the first Tsar of Russia, faced a crisis. The boyars, the powerful princely families of Russia, were constantly plotting against him, undermining his authority and poisoning his family members. The country was sliding into chaos. Ivan knew that if he fought them openly, he might lose. The boyars were too numerous and too entrenched. So, in 1564, he did the unthinkable. He abdicated. Ivan packed his belongings, took the royal treasury, and left Moscow for a remote village, sending a letter back to the capital announcing that he was tired of the boyars' treachery and was resigning the throne. The result was absolute panic. The Russian people, who saw the Tsar as their spiritual father, were terrified of being abandoned. The boyars, meanwhile, realized they were incapable of governing the unruly populace without the Tsar's divine authority. Merchants feared riots, the clergy feared civil war. Desperate, a delegation of bishops and nobles traveled to Ivan's village, begging him to return. Ivan kept them waiting, letting their fear grow. Finally, he agreed to return, but he offered them a choice. He would come back only if he were granted absolute, unlimited power to execute traitors without trial and to confiscate their lands. The alternative was for him to stay away and leave Russia to anarchy. Faced with the choice between total chaos and a tyrannical ruler, the boyars chose the tyrant. Ivan returned, established a secret police force, the Oprichnina, and ruthlessly crushed the boyar class. By withdrawing and presenting a choice, he secured a level of power he never could have achieved through direct negotiation. This law relies on a fundamental quirk of human psychology. We are captivated by the illusion of freedom. If you force someone to do something, they will resent you. But if you give them a choice, even if the choice is rigged, they will feel they are the masters of their own destiny and will accept the outcome more readily. There are several ways to color the options. One is the tactic used by Henry Kissinger when he was Secretary of State. Whenever he presented policy options to President Nixon, he would offer three choices. The first was extreme and dangerous. The third was weak and ineffective. The second was the option Kissinger wanted. Nixon, believing he was making a wise, balanced decision, would invariably choose the middle path, the path Kissinger had paved for him. Another method is to alter the playing field. In the 1860s, John D. Rockefeller set out to monopolize the oil industry. He didn't just buy out competitors, he secretly bought the railway companies that transported the oil. He then offered his competitors a choice. They could merge with his company, Standard Oil, and survive, or they could try to compete. But if they chose to compete, they found that the cost of transporting their oil had suddenly tripled, while Rockefeller's costs had dropped. It was a choice between submission and bankruptcy. Most chose submission, believing they had made the prudent business decision, when in reality, Rockefeller had left them no choice at all. To practice this law, you must hide your agency. You are the dealer, but you must let the mark believe they are the player. Whether they choose card A or card B, you win, but they must feel the card was picked by their own hand. Chapter 32. Play to people's fantasies. The truth is often avoided because it is ugly and unpleasant. Never appeal to truth and reality unless you are prepared for the anger that comes from disenchantment. Life is so harsh and distressing that people who can manufacture romance or conjure up fantasy are like oases in the desert. Everyone flocks to them. There is great power in tapping into the fantasies of the masses. In 1589, the Republic of Venice was in a state of melancholy. Its golden age of trade was fading, its empire was shrinking, and its citizens were becoming poor and cynical. Into this gloomy atmosphere arrived a mysterious man named Il Bragadino. He was tall, handsome, and lived in immense luxury. He claimed to be an alchemist who possessed the secret of the philosopher's stone, a substance that could double the amount of gold in any mixture. Bragadino did not go around shouting his claims. He was subtle. He would accidentally leave a small amount of gold dust on a table. He would speak in riddles. He refused to demonstrate his powers to the public, claiming the secret was too dangerous. This reticence only fueled the Venetians' desire. They needed to believe in him. If he could make gold, Venice could be rich again. The fantasy of instant, effortless wealth was too intoxicating to resist. The Senate welcomed him, threw lavish banquets in his honor, and funded his lifestyle, hoping he would fill their treasury. For months, Bragadino lived like a king on the city's dime. When the Venetians finally began to demand results, he simply fled to Munich, where he played the same trick on the Duke of Bavaria. Bragadino understood that people do not want the truth. The truth was that Venice's decline was caused by shifting trade routes and complex geopolitical factors that would take decades of hard work to fix. That reality was depressing. The fantasy that a magical man could fix everything with a secret powder was a relief. Bragadino didn't sell gold, he sold hope. The reality of life is often boring, banal, and filled with struggle. Change is slow, success requires hard work. If you offer people a mirror of this reality, they will turn away. But if you offer them a fantasy, a vision of a world where they can be rich, beautiful, and loved with no effort, they will eat out of your hand. This is why the romance scam works so well, or why quack doctors selling miracle cures never go out of business. They are selling the fantasy of the total transformation. To use this law, you must identify the oppressive reality that surrounds your targets. Are they bored? Offer them adventure and danger. Are they feeling old and irrelevant? Offer them the fantasy of youth and vitality. Are they confused by a complex world? Offer them a simple black and white narrative where they are the good guys. However, keep your fantasy vague. The moment you become specific, the moment Bragadino actually had to produce the gold, the bubble bursts. The fantasy must remain like the moon, distant, glowing, and perfect, unreachably beautiful. Keep it just out of reach, and they will keep following you. Chapter 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Everyone has a weakness, a gap in the castle wall. That weakness is usually an insecurity, an uncontrollable emotion or need. It can also be a small secret pleasure. Either way, once found, it is a thumbscrew you can turn to your advantage. In the 17th century, Cardinal Richelieu was the de facto ruler of France. He was a master psychologist who believed that no one was invincible. Everyone had a hidden button that, if pressed, would make them jump. He maintained a vast network of spies, not just to uncover plots, but to discover the personal quirks, vices, and childhood traumas of the nobles around him. One of his opponents was the adventurer Cinq-Mars, a favorite of King Louis XIII. Richelieu knew he couldn't attack Cinq-Mars directly because the king loved him. So, Richelieu studied the young man. He discovered that Cinq-Mars was arrogant and vain, but deep down he was terrified of being seen as a lightweight, a mere plaything. He desperately wanted to be taken seriously as a military strategist. Richelieu began to feed this insecurity. He allowed Cinq-Mars to believe he was a great general, encouraging him to take command of difficult campaigns. When Cinq-Mars inevitably failed due to his lack of experience, his fragility was exposed. He panicked, made rash political alliances with Spain, treason, and was easily outmaneuvered by Richelieu. The cardinal had found the thumbscrew, the desperate need for validation, and turned it until Cinq-Mars destroyed himself. To find a thumbscrew, you must look for the contrast. The person who acts the toughest is often the most fearful. The person who displays the most moral righteousness is often hiding a secret vice. The person who is outwardly shy is often dying for attention. Here are the key types of thumbscrews to look for. The child. Many people never grow up. They have a deep, unfulfilled need for a parental figure or for the approval they never got as a child. If you can fill that void, you own them. The secret pleasure. Find what someone enjoys when no one is looking. It might be gambling, a specific type of lover, or simple flattery. Feed this hunger, and they will be dependent on you. The insecurity. Find the thing they are most defensive about. If a man constantly talks about his intelligence, he is likely insecure about it. Validate that specific trait, and he will be disarmed. Finding the thumbscrew requires patience. You must listen more than you talk. Watch how people treat waiters or subordinates. Watch what makes them angry. Anger is often a cover for fear. Once you find the weakness, do not use it immediately. Store it away. It is your trump card, the leverage you will need when the stakes are highest. Like a torturer who knows exactly where to apply pressure, you can control a giant with a gentle squeeze of the thumb, if you know where to squeeze. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 34? Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. Chapter 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. The way you carry yourself will often determine how you are treated. In the long run, appearing vulgar or common will make people disrespect you, for a king respects himself and inspires the same sentiment in others. By acting regally and confident of your powers, you make yourself seem destined to wear a crown. The strategy of the crown. In 1484, a man named Christopher Columbus applied to the King of Portugal for ships and funding to find a new route to Asia. Columbus was the son of a lowly cheese vendor and former weaver. He had no formal education and little maritime experience compared to the great captains of the time. Yet when he petitioned the king, he did not ask for a modest sum. He demanded the title Grand Admiral of the Ocean, the position of viceroy over any lands he discovered, and 10% of all future revenues from those lands in perpetuity. The King of Portugal, insulted by this peasant's arrogance, threw him out. Columbus did not lower his price. He went to Spain and made the same outrageous demands to Queen Isabella. He acted not like a beggar, but like a grandee who had already discovered the new world and was simply offering the crown a chance to participate. His manner was so dignified, so supremely confident, that the Queen eventually acquiesced. She gave him everything he asked for. Columbus understood the strategy of the crown. If you believe you are destined for great things, and if you act as though you are already a person of importance, people will treat you that way. He manufactured a lineage and a persona that forced the world to elevate him. Contrast this with King Louis-Philippe of France, who came to power in 1830. He was determined to be different from the arrogant monarchs of the past. He called himself the bourgeois king. He avoided royal ceremonies, wore a simple grey frock coat, and walked the streets of Paris carrying an umbrella, shaking hands with shopkeepers. He wanted to be loved for his simplicity. Instead, he was despised. The people of France did not want a king who looked like a banker. They wanted a figure of majesty and distance. His familiarity bred contempt. Because he did not act like a king, the people ceased to treat him as one, and he was eventually overthrown. The lesson. We are often told to be humble, but in the game of power, extreme humility is a liability. It suggests you are pleased with your low station. Do not be afraid to set your price high. Do not let your shoulders slump or your gaze waver. Radiate a sense of purpose and dignity. This does not mean being arrogant or aloof. It means carrying yourself with an inner discipline that commands respect. If you treat yourself with value, the world will eventually agree with your assessment. Chapter 35. Master the art of timing. Never seem to be in a hurry.
Hurrying betrays a lack of control over yourself and over time. Always seem patient, as if you know that everything will come to you eventually. Become a detective of the right moment. Sniff out the spirit of the times, the trends that will carry you to power. Learn to stand back when the time is not yet ripe, and to strike fiercely when it has reached fruition. The 3 types of time. To master this law, you must understand the 3 varieties of time. Long time. This is the defensive game. It is the ability to wait, to endure, and to handle procrastination without frustration. In the 17th century, the Japanese shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu was known for his incredible patience. A famous poem compared the 3 unifiers of Japan. If the bird won't sing, said the first, kill it. If the bird won't sing, said the second, make it sing. If the bird won't sing, said Ieyasu, wait for it to sing. By waiting for his rivals to exhaust themselves and for the political climate to turn in his favor, Ieyasu established a dynasty that lasted 250 years. Forced time. This is the offensive game. This is when you disrupt the timing of your opponents. You make them wait when they want to hurry, or you force them to hurry when they need time to think. By controlling the tempo, you break their rhythm. In negotiations, making people wait creates suspense and weakens their resolve. End time. This is the execution. When the moment is right, you must drop your patience and strike with speed and force. You must not hesitate. The mistake of Fouché's rival. Joseph Fouché, the great survivor of the French Revolution, was a master of timing. He knew when to lay low during the Terror, when to betray Robespierre, and when to back Napoleon. But one of his rivals, Talleyrand, once miscalculated. In 1814, as Napoleon's empire was collapsing, Talleyrand hurried to arrange for the return of the Bourbon kings. He moved too fast, showing his hand before the emperor was truly finished. Napoleon, though weakened, was not dead. He returned from exile for the 100 Days, and Talleyrand was forced into a desperate scramble to save his own skin. He had tried to force the end time before the fruit was ripe. The lesson. Hurry is the enemy of power. It creates tunnel vision and mistakes. When you are anxious, you cannot see the whole board. Practice the art of slowing down. If you find yourself reacting emotionally to events, stop, step back, let the dust settle. Time is often your best ally if you just let it pass. Problems that seem insurmountable today often resolve themselves or lose their sting tomorrow. But when the window of opportunity opens, when your enemy is exposed, strike without mercy. Chapter 36. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. By acknowledging a petty problem, you give it existence and credibility. The more attention you pay an enemy, the stronger you make him, and a small mistake is often made worse and more visible when you try to fix it. It is sometimes best to leave things alone. If there is something you want but cannot have, show contempt for it. The less interest you reveal, the more superior you seem. The sour grapes strategy. There is an old fable about a fox who tries to reach some delicious grapes hanging from a high vine. He jumps and snaps, but they are just out of reach. After struggling for an hour, sweating and looking foolish, he finally stops. He looks at the grapes, turns up his nose and walks away saying, "They were probably sour anyway." This is not just a story about rationalization. It is a tactic of power. If the fox had continued to jump, he would have looked weak and desperate. By declaring the grapes worthless, he retained his dignity. In 1916, the Mexican revolutionary Pancho Villa raided a town in New Mexico, killing Americans. President Woodrow Wilson sent General Pershing with a massive army to capture Villa. Villa played a game of cat and mouse, retreating into the rugged terrain. The American public became obsessed with capturing this bandit. Every day the newspapers asked, "Have they caught him yet?" The more resources the great United States poured into the chase, and the more they failed, the more powerful and legendary Pancho Villa became. He was a small man made into a giant by the sheer amount of attention his powerful enemy focused on him. Wilson finally realized the trap and withdrew the troops. By ignoring Villa, his legend slowly faded. The trap of validation. When you attack a minor enemy, you elevate them to your level. You are saying, "You are important enough to bother me." This gives them oxygen. During the Protestant Reformation, the Catholic Church spent immense energy attacking Martin Luther. By issuing papal bulls against him and burning his books, they only publicized his ideas and validated him as a serious threat.
Had they ignored him as a minor heretic in a remote German province, his movement might have burned out or remained local. The lesson: if you make a mistake, do not dwell on it or apologize profusely. That only highlights the error. Move on as if nothing happened. If someone slanders you, do not fight the slander directly. That suggests you have something to hide. Treat it with contemptuous silence. If you desire something, a person, a position, a recognition, and you cannot get it, act as if you never wanted it. Indifference is the ultimate power. It shows that you are complete in yourself and that nothing outside of you can disturb your equilibrium. Chapter 37. Create compelling spectacles. Striking imagery and grand symbolic gestures create the aura of power. Everyone responds to them. Stage spectacles for those around you, full of arresting visuals and radiant symbols that heighten your presence. Dazzled by appearances, no one will notice what you are really doing. The power of the visual. In the 17th century, Louis XIV of France faced a fractured realm. The nobles were rebellious, and the people were disconnected from the crown. Louis understood that words were often picked apart and argued over, but images bypassed the intellect and struck directly at the emotions. He decided to turn himself into a living god, the Sun King. He built Versailles not just as a palace, but as a theatre of power. Every aspect of life there was a choreographed ceremony. The king's bedroom was placed in the exact center of the palace, facing east. His rising in the morning, the lever, and his retiring at night, the coucher, were elaborate public rituals attended by the highest nobles, symbolizing the rising and setting of the sun. He commissioned paintings depicting himself as Apollo and Jupiter. He threw lavish festivals that lasted for days, distracting the nobility with fireworks, plays, and balls. The result was hypnotic. The nobles, who had once plotted rebellion, were now consumed by the desire to be near the sun, to hold the king's candlestick, or to watch him eat. The spectacle was so overwhelming that it blinded them to the reality. Louis was systematically stripping them of their real political power. He had turned the court into a stage where he was the only star, and the visuals were so compelling that no one wanted to look behind the curtain. The lesson: words are dangerous. They can be debated, twisted, or ignored. Images, however, are immediate and emotional. They impose themselves on the eye and the mind. To gain power, you must lift yourself above the grey mass of words and arguments. Create a visual style, a logo, a mode of dress, a setting that symbolizes your power. Use pageantry and ritual to elevate the mundane into the momentous. When you dazzle the eye, the mind stops thinking, and you can maneuver without detection. Chapter 38. Think as you like, but behave like others. If you make a show of going against the times, flaunting your unconventional ideas and unorthodox ways, people will think that you only want attention and that you look down upon them. They will find a way to punish you for making them feel inferior. It is far safer to blend in and nurture the common touch. Share your originality only with tolerant friends and those who are sure to appreciate your uniqueness. The fate of the outsider. In 479 BC, Pausanias, a Spartan general, led the Greeks to a glorious victory against the Persians. However, Pausanias was an arrogant man who chafed under the strict, austere laws of Sparta. He fell in love with the luxury and pomp of the Persians he had defeated. He began to dress in Persian robes, hold lavish banquets, and employ Egyptian bodyguards. He even insulted his fellow Spartans, criticizing their simple ways. Pausanias believed his military genius placed him above the customs of his people. He was wrong. The Spartans, offended by his disdain for their culture, accused him of treason. He was forced to flee to a temple for sanctuary. His own mother, hearing of his betrayal, placed the first stone to brick up the entrance, trapping him inside. He starved to death, a victim of his inability to mask his difference. Contrast this with the philosopher Tommaso Campanella. In the late 16th century, he held radical atheistic views that were dangerous in Italy. When the Inquisition arrested him and tortured him to reveal his true beliefs, he did not martyr himself. He feigned madness. He acted so deranged that his torturers believed he was simply crazy, not a heretic. While in prison, he wrote a book called The Spanish Monarchy, in which he pretended to support the very powers he despised, arguing that Spain was destined to rule the world. The book convinced the authorities to release him. Campanella survived to write his true philosophy in secret, sharing it only with trusted friends. He understood that to change the world, you must first survive in it. The lesson.
There is no glory in being a martyr for your authenticity. Society craves conformity. It views the unconventional as a threat to its cohesion. If you flaunt your superior taste or radical ideas, you breed envy and persecution. The wise courtier wears a mask of conventionality. By blending in, you gain the trust of the herd, allowing you to move freely among them. Keep your revolutionary thoughts for your diary or your inner circle. In public, speak the language of the common man. In private, think as you please. Chapter 39. Stir up waters to catch fish. Anger and emotion are strategically counterproductive. You must always stay calm and objective. But if you can make your enemies angry while staying calm yourself, you gain a decided advantage. Put your enemies off balance. Find the chink in their vanity through which you can rattle them, and you hold the strings. The Duel of the Mind. In the early 17th century, the legendary Japanese swordsman Miyamoto Musashi was challenged to a duel by Sasaki Ganryu, a feared warrior known for his long sword and his quick temper. The duel was set for the morning on a small island. Ganryu arrived on time, dressed in his finest fighting gear, ready to kill. Musashi, however, slept in. He rowed slowly to the island, taking his time. On the way, he carved a crude wooden sword out of an oar. When he finally arrived, hours late, he looked disheveled, with a towel tied around his head. Ganryu was furious. He felt insulted by Musashi's lateness and his makeshift weapon. "Are you afraid?" Ganryu screamed. He drew his sword and threw his scabbard into the sand. Musashi smiled calmly. "You have lost, Ganryu," he said. "Why would a victor throw away his scabbard? You will not need it again." This comment, combined with the long wait, sent Ganryu into a blind rage. He lunged at Musashi, abandoning his disciplined technique in a desire to hack his opponent down. Musashi, perfectly calm, dodged the angry blow and brought his heavy wooden oar down on Ganryu's head, killing him instantly. The lesson. Anger acts like a fog on the mind. When you are angry, you react impulsively. You lose the ability to analyze the situation and plan your moves. Your vision narrows. To defeat a superior enemy, you must drag them into this emotional trap. Find what irritates them, their pride, their impatience, their insecurity. Prick them with insults, delays, or unpredictable behavior. Once they lose their temper, they lose their control. While they are flailing in the water you have stirred, you can strike with precision. But remember, you must remain as cold as ice. If you get angry, you lose. Chapter 40. Despise the free lunch. What is offered for free is dangerous. It usually involves either a trick or a hidden obligation. What has worth is worth paying for. By paying your own way, you stay clear of gratitude, guilt, and deceit. It is also often wise to pay the full price. There is no cutting corners with excellence. Be lavish with your money and keep it circulating, for generosity is a sign and a magnet for power. The trap of the miser. The miser is a figure of ridicule in almost every culture, because he violates the fundamental law of power. Money is not a possession to be hoarded, but a tool to be used. The miser halts the flow of power. He believes that by saving pennies he is securing his future, but in reality, he is alienating his allies and stunting his own growth. Consider the story of the Spanish diplomat and spy, Gondomar. In the 17th century, he was sent to the court of King James III of England. Gondomar was not a wealthy man, but he understood that information and influence were bought with generosity, not frugality. When he arrived in London, he began to spend lavishly. He threw banquets, gave expensive gifts to the king's favorites, and bribed officials. He even scattered gold coins to the crowds in the streets. His superiors in Spain were horrified by his expenses and urged him to economize. Gondomar ignored them. He knew that his apparent wealth made him seem powerful and important. The English courtiers, dazzled by his generosity, began to trust him and whisper secrets in his ear. The king himself became dependent on Gondomar's company and gifts. By spending money he didn't really have, Gondomar became the most powerful man in the English court, virtually dictating England's foreign policy to suit Spain. He understood that the money was merely a seed, the harvest was power. The power of the full price. There is a psychological power in paying the full price. When you try to bargain or look for a discount, you signal that you are weak, that you need the money more than you need the object or the service. But when you pay the asking price without flinching, or better yet, when you pay more than asked, you signal superiority. You show that you are the master of your resources. This earns you respect and often better service than the bargain hunter could ever imagine. The lesson: beware the free lunch. The friend who offers to do you a favor for free will eventually ask for something much more expensive in return: your loyalty, your time, or your conscience. Avoid these hidden debts, pay for what you get, and do not be a hoarder. Use your money to buy influence, to create pleasure, and to build a reputation for largesse. Generosity is an attractive force. Miserliness is a repellent one. Chapter 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. What happens first always appears better and more original than what comes after. If you succeed a great man or have a famous parent, you will have to accomplish double their achievements to outshine them. Do not get lost in their shadow or stuck in a past not of your own making. Establish your own name and identity by changing course. Slay the overbearing father, disparage his legacy, and gain power by shining in your own way. The burden of the successor. Alexander the Great had a problem. His father, King Philip of Macedonia. Philip was a brilliant military strategist who had united the Greek city-states and created a formidable army. He was a great man. When Alexander ascended the throne at age 20, he knew that if he simply continued his father's policies, he would forever be known as Philip's son. He would be a footnote in history. To gain power, Alexander had to psychologically and politically destroy the image of his father. He did not merely maintain the empire, he expanded it to the ends of the known world. He adopted Persian customs, which his father had despised. He encouraged the rumor that he was not Philip's son at all, but the son of the god Zeus. By pushing far beyond the boundaries his father had set, and by creating a style of leadership that was wilder and more ambitious, Alexander stepped out of the shadow and cast his own. Contrast this with the fate of Louis XIV's son, the Grand Dauphin. He lived his entire life in the shadow of the Sun King. He tried to imitate his father's mannerisms and policies, but he lacked Louis's genius. He became a pale reflection, a figure of mockery who never ruled and is barely remembered. He failed to cut the cord. The lesson: if you follow a legend, do not try to fill their shoes. They will never fit. You must change the game. If your predecessor was conservative, be radical. If they were austere, be lavish. If they were a military genius, be a diplomat. You must move in the opposite direction to create a contrast that highlights your own talents. You cannot be the next anyone. You must be the first you. Chapter 42. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Trouble can often be traced to a single strong individual, the stirrer, the arrogant underling, the poisoner of goodwill. If you allow such people room to operate, others will succumb to their influence. Do not wait for the troubles they cause to multiply. Do not try to negotiate with them. They are irredeemable. Neutralize their influence by isolating or banishing them. Strike at the source of the trouble, and the sheep will scatter. The cancer of the group. In any group, discontent rarely springs up spontaneously among the masses. It is usually fomented by a single unhappy or ambitious individual, a ringleader. This person works in the shadows, whispering in ears, stirring up grievances, and organizing resistance. They are the shepherd of rebellion. In 1502, Cesare Borgia had conquered the region of Romagna, but his mercenary captains began to plot against him. They were led by a man named Vitellozzo Vitelli. Vitelli was the brain behind the conspiracy. The other captains were merely the muscle. Borgia knew that if he fought them all, he might lose. But if he eliminated Vitelli, the alliance would crumble. Borgia feigned reconciliation. He invited the captains to a meeting in the town of Sinigaglia to celebrate their new peace treaty. He offered them gifts and flattery. When they arrived, smiling and unarmed, Borgia's men surrounded them. He immediately singled out Vitelli and had him strangled. Without their leader, the other captains were confused and terrified. The rebellion evaporated instantly. The sheep, the soldiers, and minor captains fled or surrendered. The lesson: do not waste your time trying to reason with a chronic troublemaker. Do not try to win over the followers while the leader is still active. You must identify the source of the infection. Who is the one person driving the opposition? Who is the one spreading the rumors? Once you find them, you must act decisively. Isolate them from the group. Fire them, banish them, or destroy their reputation. Once the head is cut off, the body will die. The followers lacking the will and the vision of the leader will quickly fall back in line.
Chapter 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. Coercion creates a reaction that will eventually work against you. You must seduce others into wanting to move in your direction. A person you have seduced becomes your loyal pawn, and the way to seduce others is to operate on their individual psychologies and weaknesses. Soften up the resistant by working on their emotions, playing on what they hold dear and what they fear. Ignore the hearts and minds of others, and they will grow to hate you. The Queen Who Lost Her Head. Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France, was born an Austrian archduchess. When she arrived in France to marry the future Louis XVI, she was young and spoiled. She had no interest in French court customs, which she found tedious, or the lives of the French people, whom she viewed as a distant abstraction. She spent her time in her private palace, the Petit Trianon, surrounded by sycophants, indulging in expensive frivolities while the country starved. When the French Revolution erupted in 1789, the people's anger was directed not just at the monarchy as an institution, but specifically at Marie Antoinette. They hated her. They called her Madame Deficit. The most famous, though likely apocryphal, quote attributed to her, "Let them eat cake," perfectly captured the public's perception of her calloused indifference, because she had never bothered to cultivate a relationship with the public or the court, because she had never tried to win their hearts. She had no reservoir of goodwill to draw upon when the crisis hit. In the end, her arrogance and isolation cost her everything. She was put on trial, humiliated, and guillotined in 1793. Contrast this with Napoleon Bonaparte, who came later. He was a master of psychology. He knew that the French people were hungry for glory and order. He spoke to their pride. He created a bond with his soldiers by remembering their names and sharing their hardships. He did not coerce them, he inspired them. He ruled not just by force, but by capturing the collective imagination of the nation. The lesson: power is not just about guns or money, it is about influence. If you rely on force, you are building on a foundation of sand. The moment your grip slips, the people you coerced will turn on you. To build lasting power, you must reach people on an emotional level, validate their feelings, allay their fears, and speak to their desires. Once you have their hearts, their hands will follow. Chapter 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. The mirror reflects reality, but it is also the perfect tool for deception. When you mirror your enemies, doing exactly as they do, they cannot figure out your strategy. The mirror effect mocks and humiliates them, making them overreact. By holding up a mirror to their psyches, you seduce them with the illusion that you share their values. By holding up a mirror to their actions, you teach them a lesson. Few can resist the power of the mirror effect. The chameleon of Athens, Alcibiades, was the most charming, brilliant, and unscrupulous figure of ancient Athens. His power lay in his uncanny ability to mirror the people around him. In Athens, he was the ultimate sophisticate, witty, intellectual, and democratic. The Athenians loved him because they saw their own best qualities reflected in him. However, when he defected to Sparta, Athens' sworn enemy, he underwent a transformation. He stopped drinking wine, took cold baths, wore rough tunics, and ate the disgusting black broth of the Spartans. He became more Spartan than the Spartans. The prickly, suspicious Spartans were completely disarmed. They trusted him implicitly because he seemed to be one of them. Later, when he fled to Persia, he transformed again, adopting the lavish dress and decadent customs of the Persian court. Alcibiades used the seductive mirror. By reflecting the customs and desires of his hosts, he bypassed their defenses. People are narcissists. They love those who are like them. When you mirror someone's values and behavior, they assume you are an ally. They lower their guard, allowing you to manipulate them from the inside. The lesson: there are several ways to use the mirror. The seductive mirror, doing what they do, creates rapport. The neutralizing mirror, copying your enemy's moves, makes it impossible for them to read your strategy, as they can't distinguish your actions from their own. The teacher's mirror involves doing to others what they have done to you, forcing them to feel the pain they have caused. This is often more effective than complaining, as it allows them to experience the consequences of their actions directly. Chapter 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. Everyone understands the need for change in the abstract, but on the day-to-day level, people are creatures of habit. Too much innovation is traumatic and will lead to revolt. If you are new to a position of power, or an outsider trying to build a power base, make a show of respecting the old way of doing things. If change is necessary, make it feel like a gentle improvement on the past. The illusion of continuity. When Julius Caesar was assassinated, Rome was plunged into civil war. The Republic was dead, but the Romans were fiercely proud of their republican traditions and hated the idea of a king. Caesar's adopted son, Octavius, later Augustus, eventually defeated his rivals and stood as the sole master of Rome. He wanted to establish an empire, but he knew that if he declared himself king or dictator, he would meet the same bloody fate as his father. Augustus was a genius of the conservative revolution. He changed everything while appearing to change nothing. He kept the Senate. He kept the consuls. He kept the tribunes. He accepted no new titles that sounded monarchical. He simply took the title princeps, meaning first citizen. To the average Roman walking the streets, the forms of the Republic remained intact. The elections were still held, though Augustus controlled the candidates, and the Senate still debated, though Augustus controlled the agenda. Yet, in reality, Augustus held all the power. He controlled the army, the treasury, and the laws. By cloaking his radical transformation of Rome in the comforting robes of tradition, he ruled for 40 years and founded an empire that lasted for centuries. The people felt safe because the familiar symbols remained, even as the underlying reality shifted completely. The lesson: human beings crave stability. Radical reform creates anxiety. If you destroy the past to build the future, you will create resentment. Instead, borrow the weight of history. Frame your new ideas as a return to ancient truths or a restoration of past glory. Keep the old titles, the old buildings, and the old rituals, even as you gut the interior and replace it with something new. The facade of continuity buys you the time and permission you need to make real changes. Chapter 46. Never appear too perfect. Appearing better than others is always dangerous, but most dangerous of all is to appear to have no faults or weaknesses. Envy creates silent enemies. It is smart to occasionally display defects and admit to harmless vices in order to deflect envy and appear more human and approachable. Only gods and the dead can seem perfect with impunity. The tragedy of the superior couple. In the 1960s, Joe Orton and Kenneth Halliwell were a couple living in London. They were both aspiring writers, but initially, Halliwell was the mentor. He was older, wealthier, and more educated. He taught Orton everything. But as they began to write, a strange dynamic emerged. Orton, who had been the pupil, began to find his voice. He had a wicked, natural wit that Halliwell lacked. Orton's plays, like Entertaining Mr. Sloane, became smash hits. He became the toast of London, celebrated for his genius and his charm. Halliwell, meanwhile, remained in the shadows. His own writing was rejected. He was bald and awkward, while Orton was young and attractive. Orton tried to help Halliwell, but his help only felt like condescension. Orton made the fatal mistake of being too perfect. He was successful, beloved, and happy, while Halliwell was failing. He did not hide his success or downplay his happiness to spare his partner's feelings. The envy inside Halliwell festered until it turned into a murderous rage. In 1967, Halliwell took a hammer and bludgeoned Orton to death while he slept, before killing himself. The lesson: envy is the most insidious of emotions because it is rarely expressed openly. It hides behind smiles and praise, all the while plotting your downfall. To protect yourself, you must never seem too happy, too rich, or too talented. Attribute your success to luck rather than your own brilliance. This makes you seem less threatening. Admit to small flaws, a bad temper, a love of junk food, a messy desk. These humanizing traits make you relatable and allow others to feel a sense of superiority in at least one area, diffusing their jealousy. Chapter 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop. The moment of victory is often the moment of greatest peril. In the heat of victory, arrogance and overconfidence can push you past the goal you had aimed for, and by going too far, you make more enemies than you defeat. Do not allow success to go to your head. There is no substitute for strategy and careful planning. Set a goal, and when you reach it, stop. The fall of the great conqueror. Cyrus the Great, 590 to 529 BC, was the founder of the Persian Empire. He was a military genius who conquered the Medes, the Lydians, and the Babylonians, creating a massive empire. He was known for his wisdom and his mercy, but after decades of unbroken success, Cyrus began to believe he was invincible. He set his sights on the Massageti, a warrior tribe led by Queen Tomiris. His advisors told him the land was worthless and the tribe was dangerous, but Cyrus ignored them. He marched his army into their territory. He won the initial battle through deception, capturing the queen's son, who committed suicide in shame. Queen Tomyris, grief-stricken and furious, sent Cyrus a message. "Restore my son to me and get out of the land. Refuse, and I swear by the sun, I will give you your fill of blood." Cyrus laughed. He pushed deeper into her territory, confident in his destiny. In the final battle, the Massagetae fought with the ferocity of the possessed. The Persian army was annihilated, and Cyrus was killed. Tomyris found his corpse, cut off his head, and shoved it into a wineskin filled with human blood, shouting, "I warned you that I would give you your fill of blood." The lesson: success is intoxicating. It floods the brain with dopamine and makes us feel like we can do anything. This is dangerous. It blinds us to the changing reality. We forget that luck played a role in our success. We forget that our enemies are learning. When you achieve your goal, do not let the momentum drag you forward into new unplanned dangers. Declare victory, consolidate your gains, and give yourself time to rest and plan the next phase. The greatest generals know how to win, but the wisest ones know when to stop. Chapter 48. Assume formlessness. By taking a shape, by having a visible plan, you open yourself to attack. Instead of taking a form for your enemy to grasp, keep yourself adaptable and on the move. Accept the fact that nothing is certain and no law is fixed. The best way to protect yourself is to be as fluid and formless as water. Never bet on stability or lasting order. Everything changes. The War of the Flea. When the communists under Mao Zedong were fighting the nationalists in China, they were vastly outnumbered and outgunned. If they had fought a conventional war, defending cities, holding front lines, they would have been crushed in weeks. Instead, Mao adopted a strategy of formlessness. His army became a fluid entity. They did not hold territory. They moved constantly, striking where the enemy was weak and retreating when the enemy advanced. They broke into small groups to infiltrate the countryside and then coalesced into a large army for a sudden ambush. The enemy advances, we retreat. The enemy camps, we harass. The enemy tires, we attack. The enemy retreats, we pursue. The nationalist army was like a heavy hammer trying to hit quicksilver. They swung mightily, but they only hit air. They became exhausted, demoralized, and overextended. By refusing to present a target, Mao wore them down until the balance of power shifted. He understood that in a world of constant change, rigidity is death. The lesson. This is the ultimate law, the summary of all others. If you are predictable, you are vulnerable. If you have a rigid structure, it can be broken. But if you are formless, if you adapt to every circumstance, if you change your strategy as easily as you change your clothes, you cannot be grasped. Do not be the oak tree that stands stiff against the storm and breaks. Be the bamboo that bends with the wind and survives. In business, do not tie yourself to a single product or method. Be ready to pivot. In negotiation, do not hold to a single demand. Be willing to trade. Power does not lie in the fortress. It lies in the wind that erodes the fortress.